Okay, in this HTML course, we're going to cover getting a text editor, Atom. We're going to cover basic document structure. We're going to cover headings and paragraphs. We're going to cover lists, including ordered lists and unordered lists. We'll include links, direct links and links opening in another tab, and links with a title. After that, we'll go to images, where we'll talk about alt text, which is important for screen readers, giving a title to your images, and also linking your images. After images, we'll talk about pre-formatted text before moving on to block quotes, including how to get a citation. After block quotes, we'll talk about tables. We'll then talk about IDs and classes. IDs and classes are important because IDs are important if you need to link to a certain part of the page, and classes are important for CSS. After that, we'll talk about the span tag, and then bold and italic text, and then superscript and subscript text. Moving on from that, we'll talk about semantic tags that are available in HTML5. After that, we'll talk about forms in HTML, and then we'll talk about audio and video elements, finishing up with video. First, video elements that you would have from your own site, and then the second example, which is more likely, where you embed video from YouTube. Okay, for this tutorial, I'm going to be using a text editor called Atom. You can get it at atom.io. Now, there are other text editors you could use, such as VS Code, VS Codium, Vim, or Emacs, Notepad++, whatever you want. But if you want to follow along exactly, I'm using Atom. Okay, so first off, we want to create a index.html document. So I'm going to click here to add folders, and I'm going to go to my desktop and create a new folder called HTML. And typically the main page of your website is an index.html page. So I'm going to create an index.html page. Okay. And here I'm going to start by declaring a doc type. So I'm going to write doc type in capitals, typically is how you see it, and then HTML, and then I'll go below that, and then I'll open an HTML tag. Okay. From there, I'll open a head tag, and within the head tag, that's where I want to put my meta tags. So I'm going to have first a meta tag called meta character set equals, and then in caps, I want to do UTF-8. Okay, sometimes you see it lowercase, but now below that, I want a viewport tag. So I'm going to do meta name equals viewport. Okay, and then I'm going to have content equals width equals device dash width, comma initial scale equals 1.0. Then I'm going to close that out, and then below that I'm going to have a meta tag for the description. So I'm going to say meta and then name equals description, and then the content equals this is a short description about the web page, typically less than 160 characters. Below that, we'll have a title tag, and with the title tag, it's opening and closing. So title of the page right here, and then we close our title tag here. Below that, we have the typically a link for our style sheet. So we say link relation equals style sheet, and sometimes you'll see type equals text slash CSS. And then you have href, which is the path to the style sheet. A lot of times it's in a CSS folder, and it's called style.css. CSS is beyond the scope of this video, but it's important to know where to put that. And then below that, you may have, and I'm just going to make a comment in HTML, which is a left bracket, an exclamation point, and 2 dashes, and so we can write our comment. This is generally where you would put your Google Analytics tag. Okay, and then we close the comment with 2 dashes and a right arrow bracket there. Okay, and you notice the text editor kind of colors it a little bit differently. Then after that, we'd close out the head of the document. Okay, and you want to have it spaced at about the same point there. And then after that, we'd have the body of the document. And within the body of the document, typically that's where your content goes. So I'm going to just put a comment here. This is where your content goes. Okay. Okay. And then you would close out your body tag. Okay. And finally, you would close out your HTML tag. So that's your basic structure of an HTML page. Typically, the base document is index.html. That's your home page. And you'll see that with the HTML document, you have indenting. Typically, you indent in for a block of HTML code, and that makes it more readable for people. Okay, let's now talk about headings and paragraphs in HTML. So like the rest of your code that the user will see, those tags you want to put in between the opening body tag and the closing body tag. So let's start with a first level heading. And to do that, we're going to do a left bracket, then H1, and then a right bracket. That opens the tag. Now we want to close the tag. So we do a left bracket, a slash, and then H1. And that closes the tag. Okay. After that, we can do a second level heading if we want. And close it, just like we did with the H1. And we can go all the way down to H6. So I'm going to do a third level heading. I'm going to do a fourth level heading. I'm going to do a fifth level heading. I'm going to do a sixth level heading. And those are headings H1 through H6. So the first level heading, you should have one of those per page. You should have a few second level headings. And then within those second level headings, you should have a few third level headings. So the second level heading is a subheading of the first level heading. The third level heading is a subheading of the second level heading. And then H4, H5, and H6 are each sublevel headings of the one higher. But typically, you don't use much more than an H3 within an HTML page. But in rare circumstances, you may want to have a fourth, fifth, or even sixth level heading. Okay, enough about headings. Let's talk about paragraphs in HTML. So we can do a paragraph here, and we do a left bracket, a P, and then a right bracket. And this is a paragraph. Okay. And then to close out our paragraph, we can just do a left bracket, a slash, and a P, and then a right bracket. And that's it for headings and paragraphs. Okay, now I want to talk about lists in HTML. So there's two types of lists, the ordered list and the unordered list. So to do an ordered list, we'll start with a left bracket, and then we'll type OL for ordered list. Within our order list, we want to do a left bracket and then an LI and a right bracket. That begins our list item. So this is list item 1. And then we close it with a left bracket, a slash, LI, and a right bracket. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this line a few more times. And so the next list item would be list item 2. And then after that would be list item 3. We can close out our ordered list with a left bracket slash OL. Okay, so that's our ordered list. So let's go down and now create an unordered list. So by the way, an ordered list would be labeled 1, 2, 3, and so on. An unordered list will show up as bullets. So to start an unordered list, you do a left bracket, then UL for unordered list, and then you create your list items. So this is list item 1. Close out that tag. Let's duplicate that line. And we'd have list item 2 and 3. And then at the end, just like our ordered list, we close out our unordered list. Okay, now I want to talk about links in HTML. So to create a link, we create an anchor tag. So that's a left bracket, then an A, then we do a space, and we type href, and then equals and quotes. And within the quotes, we're going to type the path to our link. And in this case, let's say I wanted to link to Google, I would type https / google.com. Okay. I then can close the link, the opening tag rather, with a right arrow bracket, and I can type some link text like link to Google. Like many other tags in HTML, we have to close out the anchor tag with a left bracket, a slash, an A, and a right bracket. Okay, so that's a link to Google, and that will send the user directly there within the same tab. Now, if you want the link to open up in a different tab, there's another thing we can do. So we start our anchor tag, and we have the path, and then we do a space after the path, and we type target equals, and then within quotes, underscore blank. Okay, and then we would type our link text, link to Google, and close out our anchor tag. Okay, so that would be a link that opens in a separate tab, in a separate window. Okay, we can also put a title within our link. So again, we can create our link, https / google.com. And let's create our title with a space and then title equals, and then we can put our title, which in this case would be Google. All right, and then we could have our link text, link to Google, and close out our anchor tag. Okay, now I want to talk about images in HTML. So to create an image, we do a left bracket, then img for image, a space, then src for source, equals, and then the path to the image. If it's a relative path on your website, you might have something like a period, / images, and then the name of the image, .jpeg or PNG or whatever. If it's online, you would have the link to the site, so sitename.com / and then the path to the image, PNG or JPEG or whatever. Okay. We also want to include in our image tag alt text, and that helps with screen readers. So we can type our alt text, which maybe is something like, I don't know, if it was a picture of a cat, we could say something like picture of cat. Okay, something descriptive. Now we close it out with the right arrow bracket there, and we don't have a closing image tag, so it's just one tag, and that's an image. Okay, we can also, let's say we have an image, we can also have the image have a title. Okay, so let's just say we had this image locally, so it was in some images folder, and the name of the image .jpeg, and we have our alt text here, whatever the image is about, and then we could have our title, and we could have our title of the image here. Okay. We can also link to an image. We can nest an image within an anchor tag. So we could say we could start our anchor tag, A with a space, and then href, and then the path here to the link, wherever we want it to link to. And then within that, we could have our image tag with our source, which whatever our images was, image.jpg, whatever the name was, with our alt text, of course, whatever the alt text we wanted to put in there, and then we would close out the anchor tag. So it would wrap the image within an anchor tag. Now I want to talk about preformatted code. So to create a block of preformatted code, we do a left bracket, then then a right bracket, and then we can start our preformatted code. So I could do something like Tim Unkert's site here with these slashes like this, and maybe I even do like a smiley face and a frowny face. Okay, and then I can end my preformatted code with a left arrow bracket, a slash, and pre. Okay, so however I type my preformatted code, it's going to show up that way on the web page. In HTML documents, you can also include block quotes. So to do that, you do a left arrow bracket, then you type block quote, a right arrow bracket, and then you start to type your block quote. So this is a block quote. Okay, you close it out with the block quote closing tag. Now within this, you may also want to cite something, and you can do that with the keyword cite equals and then the address that you're citing. Perhaps I'm citing something from google.com, some site area. I don't know. You can do that. Okay, so you can include the citation within the block quote. Next, I want to talk about creating a table in HTML. So to do that, we're going to open the table with the opening table tag, and then we start with a table row tag, which is just TR within the tags. Typically in the first table row, we have table headings. Those are TH tags. So this would be table heading 1. We'd close out the TH tag. This would be table heading 2, and we'd close out the table heading tag. And then we'd close out our table row tag. We'd then start another table row. And in the second table row is typically where the table data begins. So we'd have table data 1 and close out the table data tag, table data, spell this, table data 2 and close out the table data tag, and then we close out the table row tag. And let's just create one more. So again, we'd have table data, so table data 3, close out the table data tag, table data 4, and close out the table data tag, close out the table row, and then at the end, you want to close out the table. And that's how you create a table in HTML. Now I want to talk about IDs and classes in HTML. Now typically you only have one ID per page, but we can create a section of the page and give it an ID. And the old way of doing this was with a div tag. So you'd type the opening div tag, you'd say ID, and then you would say whatever the ID is, maybe part 1, something like that. And then you would have code that goes inside of here. Okay, and then you would close out your div tag. Now, above this, what we could do is we could have an anchor tag, and it could link to part 1 with a hashtag here and part 1, and then we would link, we'd have our link text, so link to part 1, and we'd close out the anchor tag. Okay, and a person could click on that link and go to that part of the page. Typically now there are newer tags that are more specific than divs that we use, but the idea is the same. If we use a more specific tag, you still have this part that says ID and then whatever the name of the ID is, and you can still link to the page. We also have classes in HTML. And to do that, let's create another div with a class equal to whatever your class name is. And we'd have our code inside the class. And then, let me close out this comment here. And then we would close out our class. And within this class, we could use the class name to style that part of the page with CSS. Now, again, that's beyond the scope of this video, but you do want to think about when you're creating your HTML, how you want certain sections styled and give them classes that are descriptive that goes along with that kind of styling. All right, so you want to be descriptive in your classes. Okay, now I want to talk about an inline tag in HTML called the span tag. So you can put a span tag within a paragraph tag to, like for instance, if you wanted to alter the way some of the text looks, but not the entire paragraph. So let's say we have a paragraph here, and we have this is the first sentence, and then we have a second sentence that we want to be overlined. Okay, so I want to have an overline in the second sentence. So we close out our paragraph tag. Well, what we can do is we can go to the start of this and we can create a span tag, and we can give it a class, maybe something descriptive like text overline, something like that. And then we can close out that span tag. And then at the end of the text that we want styled differently, we create our closing span tag, like so. Okay, now I want to talk about bold text. There's actually two specific tags for bold text in HTML. So let's start with our paragraph tag, and we could create a sentence. This is normal text. And then if we want to create bold text, well, I'm going to show you the older way of doing it and then the newer way. So the older way was a B tag. This is bold text. Now, and then we'd close out the B tag and close out the paragraph tag. Now, that's great and all, but it doesn't really tell the search engines to emphasize that text. And typically, if we want a bold text, we want to emphasize it. So there's a way we can emphasize that text for our search engines with a different tag. So I'm going to duplicate this line, and I'm going to go here and change the text to what will signal to the search engines that this is text that's more important. It contains words that are more important in the article and will help us tell what the article is about. So it's a little SEO for you as well. So instead of a B tag, we type a strong tag. So a strong open and closing tag. Okay, now I want to talk about italic text in HTML. So let's create a paragraph again. So we'll create a paragraph and say, this is normal text. And then there's two ways to create italic text. So first I'll show you the old way. So that's within I tag. This is italic text. And then we close out our I tag and close out our paragraph. And let's duplicate this line. Okay, and now I'm going to change this to what the modern technique is. Okay, so in modern HTML, we want an EM tag for emphasis. This lets the search engines know that this text is a little bit more important than the rest of the text in our article or on our page. Now, there are certain circumstances where you would want to include an I tag instead of an emphasis tag, or a B tag instead of a strong tag, and that would be if you just want to change the look of the text but don't want to emphasize it for search engines. Okay, next I want to talk about the superscript tag in HTML. This tag is useful if you're trying to do some math equations with exponents in your document. So we can create a paragraph, and then let's say we have X, then we can do the superscript tag, and let's say we want X squared, so we put 2 within the close or the opening and closing superscript tag, and we could say equals 9 or something like that. And that's how you do superscript. Okay, now let's talk about subscript. So subscript is useful as well. For instance, if you are also doing math with a logarithm, say, and you want subscript of, say, base 2 or log base 2 of 8, say 8 equals x, something like that, some kind of equation like that. Okay, now I want to talk about HTML5 elements. So there's a lot of different tags. Earlier in the video, I talked about the div tag, but there's a lot of more specific tags with HTML5. For instance, if you want the main part of your page, you would include that in a main tag. So you open and close the main tag. All right. Within the main tag, you could have section tags. So we could have a section here and then close the section. And within the section would be a bunch of code, and then you could have another section here and close the section. That would have some more code, maybe some paragraphs and headings and so on and so forth. And then you have a section here and close that section, right? And you can have as many sections as you want. Outside of the main function, and this is one of the things that might be used for a sidebar, is an aside tag. Okay, so you'd have an open and closing aside tag, and you may have sections within your aside tag. Okay, above the main tag, you might have a header tag. Okay, this is where the top of the document goes, and you might have within the header tag a nav tag, which is where your navigation menu goes. And typically within a navigation menu, you would have an unordered list with a list item, and nested within the list item would be your link tag to some link in the navigation menu. And you might have a bunch of these, right, within your navigation menu. And then you would close out the unordered list, close out your nav tag, and close out your header tag. Likewise, after the main and aside tags, you might have, scroll on down here, a footer tag. And that would be your footer tag. Okay, now I want to talk about forms in HTML, which is a very important thing to know how to do because sometimes you'll have to create forms for your website or that kind of thing. So to create a form, you start with a form tag, and then typically you have a label for an input. So let's say you want to have an input that takes in the first name. You might call it F name, right? So you'd have a label for the first name, and then you'd have something like first name colon space, and then close out your label tag. And then you would have your input tag. The type is typically would be, to take in a name, would be text. And then after that, you'd have an ID and a name, which you would want the name to be the same as the label name. And the ID is important for using it, like when you use HTML with PHP and that kind of thing, to take stuff in, put it in a database. Okay, so you'd have, your label for your first name, and then after the input, you might have a break tag, which would bring it down to the next line, and then you'd have, say, a label for your last name, so maybe L name here. And we want to have an equals. And, you'd have last name, colon, and a space, close out the label tag there. And then you'd have an input type, again, text, ID equals L name, name equals L name. And have another break tag here, and then have a label for, say, an email. So, and we'd say something like email, have a space, close out the label. And then the input type this time wouldn't be text. You could check it. You could actually use email, and that would make sure they would enter in a valid email address. It's called validation. So input type would be email, ID would be email, and name would be email. And maybe you have a break tag here. And then the final input type you might have, it would be submit. And that would give you a submit button. And you could close out that input type. And you probably want the ID equal to submit. So you could target it with PHP. And name equal to submit as well. And you want to close out your form. And typically, you'd have a form in a PHP page. So this isn't an index.html page, but you'd have a form action. And that would be, if you had it in an index.php or a form.php, you'd put the name of the file, or if you wanted a different PHP file to handle it, you put the name of that file. And you'd also have your method, and the typical method would be post. Okay, now I want to talk about audio elements in HTML. For instance, if you wanted to play a short song on your site or something like that. you can create an audio tag, and you want to open it with the opening audio tag with at least controls. And then within there, you would type source and src, and then the path to the source. So if I had, say, a folder called sounds and a sound called sound1 or song1, let's say song1.mp3, I would put that. Then after that, you'd have to put in your type, which is audio slash mpeg. Okay, and then after that, you would close out your audio control. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way, if you wanted to have it autoplay, you would type audio controls autoplay, and then within that, you'd have your source. Let's say it was song 2 that was in the sounds folder. It would be song2.mp3 with our type equal to audio slash mpeg, and then we would close out the audio tag here. Okay, so that's two ways to put audio in your HTML document. One with just the regular controls, and the other one where it autoplays the song. Okay, you can also have video in your HTML document. The first way I'll show you is how you can embed video if you have it on your own root document. And the second way I'll show you how to embed a YouTube document. So we want to start with a video tag for the first way, and we can set the width equal to, spell width correctly, equal to the width in pixels, let's say 300, and the height equal to the height in pixels, let's say 250. And then we want to have the keyword controls here, and then we have our source with src, and then the path. So let's say we had a folder called videos, and we had a video called video1.mp4, and then we also have the type equal to video slash mp4, and close out our source, and then close out our video tag like such. So that's the first way. Okay, the second way to do this is, let's say we had a video we wanted to embed, one of our videos from our YouTube channel. We could go here and open up YouTube and go to share, and then we could click on the embed link here and copy this and simply paste it into our code. And let me toggle soft wrap here. Let's view soft wrap so you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so pasted in this iframe from YouTube right into our code, and that would give us a video embedded from YouTube on our web page. That concludes most of the major elements in HTML that you'll use on websites. I hope you found this video interesting, and if you did, could you please give it a like, as it would help get it out to more people. I also want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.